is the theme to the show. The show is all about you. Not Jeff, but you and your story. Because everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Brought to you by JeffSeltzer.com.
Hello and welcome to Everybody Has a Story with Jeff Seltzer. I am your host, Jeff Seltzer, and we've made it 40 weeks. This is episode 40 of the podcast. Exciting times, a lot of things going on. Firstly, as always, I do want to thank my buddy Marcus Brandon, first of all, for making that theme song. He may say it was all AI, but it's probably above my pay grade on how to fix that. I don't know how to do it. So, Marcus, thanks again for putting that together. Also, once again, I've gotten some great feedback about last week's episode. Marcus came on with probably about 12 hours notice. Lots of fun. Definitely a topic a lot of people can relate to, and the fact that it was all about, or largely about, making friends online and via like social media. Got a lot of notes, a lot of DMs saying that they can relate to it. It's things that they've experienced, lived through as well. I mean, in 2025, most people are on Instagram or Facebook, or whatever else like that. And while years ago you'd meet people, I guess, at work or in parties or whatever. Nowadays, social media is definitely a lot more of a popular or kind of a common way to meet. So just, again, want to thank Marcus for that. With that said, I did also want to mention a brief conversation that Beth and I had over the past week. So first of all, as a follow-up from last week's episode, I did fly to California on Friday, flew home on Sunday, both through Newark. Fortunately, there were no issues, both physically, for me not throwing up, as well as we made it both flights with plenty of time, no delays, which was really great. One thing that Beth mentioned to me while we were on one of the planes, which made me think about, was that I'm probably the worst introvert ever. I oftentimes refer to myself as an introvert, kind of a hybrid as an extrovert when I need to be, but like naturally I'm more introvertish. Here's kind of how this one came up. So obviously, outside of the idea, the fact that an introvert generally would not have a podcast to talk to people, that probably is like strike one about how I'm probably not the greatest of introverts out there. Number two, I'm wearing a Cubs baseball cap, and I don't follow baseball at all. So I don't like baseball. I'll watch occasionally, but for me, it's a very boring thing. Like I just don't have any interest in it. Now, the challenge is I've been wearing Cubs merchandise, Chicago Cubs baseball merchandise for years now, which weirdly draws me into conversations that I want nothing to do with. Let's rewind maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, obviously in the heat of COVID when everybody had to wear a mask. And my stupid behind decided to wear a Chicago Cubs mask. I thought it looked cool and I thought it was neat. I think I was at Disney World and a guy approaches me and goes, "Oh, Cubs, right. What part of Chicago are you from?" I go, "I'm from New Jersey. That's where I live." He just rolls his eyes at me and walks away. So, I mean, I'm really just introducing conversations and topics that I want to have. Fast forward to the flight home on Sunday from Los Angeles, and I'm sitting in my seat, and this happens to me all the time. We're in the Cubs baseball cap, and the flight attendant walks over, and he's like, "Oh, I see you're a Cubbies fan." And I'm like, "Oh, no, I see where this is going." He goes, "Yeah, they're having a great season, aren't they?" And I'm like, "I don't know anything about how the season's going. I don't know if they're winning or losing." So I just play along. Like for me, I've learned kind of like the act as if mentality from the movie Boiler Room from years ago, or just kind of go with the conversation. And for the most part, if they introduce the conversation, they have a lot to say. They don't really want to hear much from you. So it just kind of worked out well. I was like, "Yeah, I guess they're doing pretty well." And he's like, "Yeah, they beat the Padres and they beat the Dodgers, all my teams out here." I'm like, "Yeah, I guess they're having a good season." He's like, "Man, really amazing. Blah, blah, blah." It's going on and on. Like I look in the background and see Beth's just laughing hysterically at me. She recognizes I have no clue at all what's going on, but I'm really just playing along. The guy's like, "Yeah, and they'll probably make the playoffs again this year." And I'm like, "Well, hopefully they will, but we'll see what happens. And, we'll hope for the best. But, it's baseball. We're in May. Maybe they'll make it. Maybe they won't. But we'll see what happens." This guy literally went on for about a minute and a half. And I could see Beth is just laughing hysterically in the background. Again, this happens to me all the time. Maybe a year or two ago, some guy was talking about, I think, Anthony Rizzo. I think he either does or did play for the Cubs. Again, I'm an awful baseball fan and from a history perspective, or modern times anyway. And he's going on about how like he was Anthony Rizzo's coach. And I'm like, "That's great. Congratulations." I'm super excited to hear that. And he's going on and on like I'm supposed to be impressed. And I guess I'm impressed that he's a former Major League Baseball player's coach. But at the end of the day, I really had nothing to add to the conversation. So I would say that's strike number two in the fact that I do wear merchandise and gear and hats for things that I know absolutely nothing about. Thirdly, I would say the fact that since I'm always smiling and I'm, I guess, a people pleaser for the most part, obviously a recovering people pleaser, but definitely trying to, improve upon that. And I just always have like a look on my face that says, I'd like to talk to you. Like, I'll smile at people, which generally people think means that they want to talk to me or I want to talk to them. Which again, I'm trying to be polite and trying to be nice, but at the end of the day, as Beth says, I'm probably the worst introvert ever. So I'm trying, obviously, I do wear t-shirts that say like, I don't want to go big. I want to go home. People don't take the note. It is what it is. But again, I put myself out there and this is what happens. Maybe one day I'll learn, or maybe one day life will just work out the way it's supposed to. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Maybe we'll follow up in a few weeks and see if I've learned anything, or if I'm still wearing, Cubs or some other sports team's attire that I'm nothing about. So we'll see what happens there. With that said, I did want to once again remind everybody that on Instagram, the show can be found at Everybody Has a Story Pod. My personal Instagram is at Seltzer77. You can reach out to the show directly via email at everybodyhasastorypod@gmail.com. If you want to send any business inquiries, send me any pictures, whatever, that's where you do it. If you want to listen to the show anywhere, obviously, as mentioned before, maybe last week, we are on video at YouTube and Spotify at Everybody Has a Story Pod. We are available on all podcast platforms, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon, you name it, we're probably there. And lastly, my buddies Marcus and Daniel kill me if I don't mention the fact that this show is brought to you by JeffSeltzer.com. So for all of your Jeff Seltzer needs, your needs, as always, you can reach me over at JeffSeltzer.com. With that said, I did want to add that I do have a guest this week. 2 weeks ago, I was solo. Last week, I barely had a guest. Marcus joined last minute. But this week, I have my friend. I've known her for almost 20 years at this point, which is insane. Mm-hmm. 47 years old. It doesn't feel like I've known her for almost half my life, but I have. Here's my friend, Jaime Romano. Jaime, how are you today?
Good. Hi. I think your intro is awesome because you are the worst introvert.
Life is weird, right? It's one of those things where, like, I said to Beth, I go, what should I do? She goes, you can wear like a plain Nike hat or something like that. And I'm like, no, because I'm sure somebody will approach me like, hey, do you see the new Jordan shoes? I'm like, I don't know. Like, what do I do?
No, I definitely think you get more conversation from a sports hat than you
I'm sure I would.
Nike.
I'm sure I would. But at the end of the day, I mean, it's what I'm comfortable with. And if people feel comfortable approaching me, I mean, again, I smile and just hope for the best, right? We'll see what happens.
You're right. It's like I'm extremely extroverted, friends for 20 years. So either I completely overwhelm you and you love it, or you're just the worst extrovert.
Well, it's funny. I'm
just going to call you an extrovert now. Maybe you're just a bad extrovert.
I don't know. I mean, maybe I play the part well, like it's professional or something. I mean, you would know that about me. It's the there's the meme that I've seen for years now, where like most introverts, basically how they make friends, basically what a bunch of extroverts will kind of like take them aside and kind of like adopt them as their own, and all of a sudden they become friends, part of that friend group, right? That's how it goes.
Yeah, that's funny. I actually have to get you a t-shirt. My sister has a t-shirt that says, I came, I went, I had anxiety, so I
went home. Yeah, I often say, like, I've done enough peopling for today, and I think it's time to go now, so or something like that. So first of all, Jaime, welcome, and thank you for coming to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Of course. So before Jaime introduces who she is, I did want to mention the fact that we have had a mother-son combination, as back in November, we had Jerry Percal, and then recently we had Marcus Percal, her son. Jaime is the first sister legacy we've had, as her sister Stephanie Romano was on with her wife Tracy, Stephanie's wife, not Jamie's wife, back in, I don't know, early episodes, whatever, talking about DIY. And now we have Jaime on, 35 or so episodes later. So you're the first sibling combination we've had, which is pretty exciting.
Interesting. And I guess anyone that listened to your earlier podcast with my sister will soon realize we are also very different. Stephanie, who builds and does DIY, and then you have me, who watches reality TV and scrolls the internet.
This is what makes everybody unique and special, right? I guess is how it is. So with that said, Jaime, we do know that you have a sister. Your sister is awesome, as you are awesome as well. Do you want to give a little background on who Jaime Romano is?
Yeah, sure. So you already mentioned we've been friends for a real long time, over 20 years. And also proud to say that we've been colleagues for a long time, too. I'm married. I have 2 kids. I'm currently on mat leave, which has been wonderful. So I have a 3.5-year-old son named Dean and a 4-month-old daughter named Julia, who we just went to the doctor today. She's a little chunk. She's so cute. If she wasn't cranky, I probably would have done like a little like Lion King to show everyone, because I'm quite proud. I'm clearly not as interesting as my sister. I'm not building things and making stuff from scratch. I spend a lot of my time working, which is probably a lot of what you and I, Jeff, have like a foundation on. We watch a lot of TV. I like shopping. I like the beach. I like people. So my favorite things is to just go out to eat, have friends, talk to friends, have a couple cocktails, be around family. but there's really not anything majorly interesting about me.
You undersell yourself, but we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
So again, thank you for joining. So as everybody can see in the show notes or in the topic for the show, today's episode is about Love is Blind. So for those that aren't aware, Love is Blind is a reality show that airs on Netflix. The 8th season recently aired, and the general premise of the show is it's like blind speed dating of sorts, where people basically have all the guys on one side, women on the other side, and they all get, I guess, connected in one-on-one conversations where they don't see each other. And they try to learn about each other and figure out where the attraction is there without actually seeing what the other person looks like. And then the general premise from there is the way that you make it to, quote, the next round is you have to get engaged to somebody sight unseen. And then they take you on an island vacation of some kind where you're supposed to, quote, honeymoon, get to know them better. You see them, see if you're, you work together well, stuff like that. And then the idea is within a month or so getting married. It's a very weird concept. It's crazy, right? But I mean, it's this 2025. I mean, we're 25 years into reality programming. So you have to figure at some point, have to keep working its way up, right? Like years ago, they had Who Wants to Marry a Millionaire, and that worked out about as well as you would think. We're 8 seasons in, and I think, my math is probably not even close, but there are a few marriages that have lasted over the years. A couple
there's
of babies.
More than you would think. Like you'd say this show is so crazy. But there's at least like someone from every season that has lasted.
Which is crazy. I mean, for me, again, as a data geek and as a personal finance guru of sorts, like you barely ever see them talk about like finance habits and spending habits. Like I think there was an earlier season where after they got engaged, about to get married, there was a couple that was like, oh yeah, I have a huge amount of college debt and stuff like that. Like things that like you would hope or you would want to kind of know about early on in the relationship so that you understand what you're getting into and things like that. So there's obviously there's a lot of conversations that happen probably off air. And outside of me, I'm not sure anybody else would be interested in hearing them talk about their personal P&Ls in a speed dating environment. So I guess that's where I'm a little special here.
No, but that would be like one of the first questions I ask. And there's like questions you could ask to find out about like their financial situation without just saying, are you coming with like loads of debt?
Yeah.
And surprisingly, they don't really talk about money.
They don't. And what I would say also was interesting to me too was it wasn't until probably this season or last season that it finally clicked to me that I would always ask the question of like, okay, so what if they fall in love or whatever, and they live in different parts of the country? It wasn't until recently that I realized that basically like every season is built around people who live like in a certain city or town. So they don't live that far away. I mean, again, maybe I was just clueless to it or didn't pay attention to it. But like this year was Minneapolis or Minnesota or something like that, which was interesting. But then I also thought about, and this kind of came up, I guess, in this season, which we could talk about in a bit, like they kind of risk the fact that people might know each other or might know of each other, right? Especially if they live in the same town.
Which I think this season and last season, we saw some of that. Like people knew like someone's friend or it was a little too close. And everyone kept saying, oh, like Minneapolis, it's a small city. Like, and I'm like, oh, I didn't think it was that small that you would go on this reality TV show and like circles would be intertwined. But
yeah,
I don't know. I guess maybe compared to New York, it is small, but I would still think it was big enough.
I mean, I guess I think about if they had like a Love is Blind Rockaway, New Jersey, everybody would probably know everybody or something. Well, I mean, even Love is Blind Morristown, New Jersey would probably be a little too small, but I guess Minneapolis is a big enough city. I know they've done like Atlanta. I think they said Denver is the next season. So I guess they're going for places that have enough people, but it's also thinking about it too, right? It's a case of like, you have people who are joining because they probably want to be famous or want to be on TV. And you have people who want to fall in love. And like, I think one person even said like, hey, they reached out to me, which makes me think that maybe like their talent agency reached out to them. So maybe they were looking for, TV presence as opposed to like, hey, I'm looking to fall in love. You know what I mean?
Oh, I didn't realize they actually reach out to cast members. That kind of changes things for me a little bit.
I mean, I don't mean to pull the curtain back too much or spoil it for here, Jamie, but I mean, reality show is, I guess, you have to air quote reality show, I guess, because
Jamie watches like this is scripted. Oh, that's scripted. I'm like, don't ruin it for me. I would like to think that none of this is scripted. It's all coming from the heart.
It's so funny. Okay, so getting into this, let's take a step back. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, we probably... I mean, I don't know if I found Love is Blind first or you did. When I say found, I mean, it probably popped up in our Instagram or on Netflix or whatever. But I think from the very first season, at some point, I think you and I connected and was talking like, hey, I'm watching. Are you watching? And it kind of went from there. Like, I think...
Was it COVID? We chatted during COVID and you were like, I think you need to watch this.
I think that might have been it. I think I was watching it because there were two shows that debuted around the same time. I think there was this one and the other one, which I'm not going to talk about on the show because it probably goes a little too explicit. But there were two Netflix, I guess, like spicy kinds of shows that hit around the same time that we were both kind of like going back from. Did you watch this yet? You see what happened? Blah blah blah.
That's the one you told me to watch. You were like, okay, if you ran out, I got another one, and that's when he was like, I can't do this one with you. He's like, you're on your own.
Yeah, it was those two shows, but I think Love Is Blind is a little safer. It's a little more interesting. It's a little more realistic.
Yeah,
because I mean, like everybody's gone on dates before, right? Like everybody's done speed dating of sorts, or met people at bars or whatever. So I think this was a little more relatable to, I guess, the average person, like I would call you and I. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'd say it's relatable, but it's funny because even though it's been 8 seasons, every time I watch it, I'm like, this is real. Like, seriously, people are really doing this. It's working. Like, right? Like, even you and I are like texting, being like, this is crazy. And you think we'd know by now.
So before getting into the season, I think there were two things that you and I had texted about. Because I watched most of this when I was on vacation back in, I guess it was April at this point or whatever. My family's at the beach. And for me, I'm trying not to tan too much or burn, I guess. So I ended up just like going right through it or whatever. So there were two things I think that we texted about. One of them was, and again, we said before, the topic or the idea of the show is they never see each other. I think from an audience perspective, so myself watching on TV, that Netflix should offer an option where they blur out the faces of all the people until the reveals. As we're sitting there and we're watching and we're trying to figure out who's going to connect, who's not, or whatever, I think if we could experience kind of like what they are experiencing, I think that would be another level. Now, I'm not saying that by default it should be like that, but they should add like as an extra feature, you can click on like the filter or the blinded, so that way we don't see them until they show who they are. You know what I mean?
I know. I wonder if we would be more invested or less invested if we couldn't see them. I don't
know.
Yeah,
it'd be interesting. I mean, and again, I mean, I'd love to see them explore it or try it out. I mean, I'm sure they're not listening to my little podcast here, so they'll never hear about it. But with that said, I think it'd be a fun add-on. The other thing, which I thought was really interesting, and this probably says a little bit more about my personality than people need to know, is you had texted me and said, okay, so what if Robin came to you and said, hey, Robin's my 17-year-old daughter, for those that don't know at home. You said, what if Robin came to you and said, hey, I was on the show Love Is Blind, blah, 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 or I want to be. Like, what do you think? So my experiences from life have taught me lots of different things from a parenting perspective, a child perspective, such like that. So my mindset was, I initially responded back to you, Jamie, and I said, I don't know. Then I took a step back and I thought about it. I was like, okay, here's what I would do. First thing I would do is I would talk to Robin and say, I kind of walk her through the process and say, is this something you really want to do? Have you thought about it? Is this kind of a safe environment? Blah, 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 blah. And kind of walk her through, I guess, my perspective on if I would or wouldn't do it and kind of get a sense of why she wants to do it. But at the end of the day, if she decided she was going to do it, like I would be 100% behind her, with her and supportive, as long as she's, protecting herself and taking care of herself along the way. Because as a parent, I look at it and I'm like, look, I would love to have a relationship with my kids, forever, right? Until I pass away. But at the same time, I'm here to help them out, but I'm not here to kind of like overreach and push them on everything. Like I would rather, be there and help them along the way, as opposed to, go too far, get kicked out of their lives, and at the end of the day, not have any piece of their life, whatever else like that. So for me, it took a lot of thought, and I guess from my own personal life experiences, which I'm not going to go too deep into, but I was like, you know what, I'm here to help guide her. She could take my advice or leave it, but either way, at the end of the day, I want to be there with her on the journey. You know what I mean?
I think, yeah. So after you text me that, I was like, wow, Jeff actually put a lot of thought into this. This is like a very open-minded approach, because originally I was like, oh hell no. I mean, I could do it. So
first of all, I would say, therapy is very valuable, and going to therapy as well as doing personal therapy, research, stuff like that definitely helped me out. So I would say like that also, part of that made me think about, like, on this show, fast forwarding a little bit, there's oftentimes, I think, 4 different types of families. So once somebody gets engaged and then them and their quote fiance have to meet the families usually have one of 4 approaches. Number one is, I don't want to have anything to do with this. Leave me alone. I want nothing to do with the show, which is obviously kind of like exiting their life or kind of having nothing to do with it, which is scary, because if they eventually go through it, they get married. Like, you, as a family member, like it or not, I would probably want to be part of that conversation, be part of that relationship. Number 2 is, I will not be on TV, but I will still meet the fiance and I want to learn about it. and be a part of this conversation, which I think is probably one of the healthier ways to do it. Like if you're serious about it, maybe you don't want cameras there, but to completely exclude yourself, you're going to basically remove your voice from the conversation.
I would agree. I wouldn't want to be on TV, but I wouldn't remove myself from the process, because I'm like, if it's going to happen, then like, if you can't beat them, join them, right? Pretty much.
And you think about it like, okay, so hypothetically it lasts 5, 10, 20, 50 years or whatever. Like, do you really want to kind of, excommunicate yourself from the family off of something like this? Maybe not, maybe, but at the end of the day, you can't guide them if you're not in the game or not like in the stadium. So there's that. Number 3 is the family will meet on camera, but are very negative the entire time, which is something I've seen a lot too, where basically it's a very hostile conversation where like the fiance comes and like, what do you want to do with my blah, 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 whatever else like that. It's a very weird situation. And the number 4 is the ones that are just happy that their kid met somebody and they're just kind of like happy-go-lucky throughout. So I would say number 4, I definitely would not be. I would probably be a little more skeptical, but maybe not the 3 level, because the 3 level is generally like a very hostile, like, you better be good for my kid because the blah, blah, blah. Like for me, that's not the way that I am. So I would say I'd say probably 2-ish is the way. Cause like, if you're really serious about it, maybe have the tough conversations, have the good conversations, but maybe have them off camera. I don't know how that works from a production perspective, because I'm sure Netflix is like, well, what good is this if they're not going to be on TV? You know what I mean?
Oh, but there was a couple of couples where like I think it was season 7.
Okay.
Because what was that, San Diego?
I think so.
There was a couple on there. The father didn't want to be on TV, but he was part of the process. So the mom was on TV.
I remember that, yeah.
But the dad was not. I forgot what her name was. But they were actually one of the couples that end up making it, and they're still together, because recently I checked her Instagram and I was like, oh.
Nice.
It's been over a year. It's almost like 2 years.
Yeah, it's got to be 2 years, because season 8, looking at the notes, they finished filming it, or they got married in March of 2024. So you figure the season before was probably a year earlier in 23. So give or take, maybe 6 months. I don't know what, at least a year and a half at this point, I would say.
What always like gets me too is like part of like not being on TV is like one I probably just wouldn't want. Like, I'm not gonna say fame, but it's obviously not real fame. I wouldn't want the attention.
Sure.
But also, what about these people's jobs? Like some of the castmates were nurses or like in healthcare. Like one was like an oncology nurse, and it's like a very respectable job. Now when she goes and takes care of a patient, they're going to be like, oh my God, you were that girl on TV. Maybe everyone's not watching Love is Blind like us, but still you would just think from like a work perspective that maybe you wouldn't want your identity to be so broadly put out there. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
I don't know. I mean, you're talking to an introvert who has a podcast who works a full-time job in corporate America. So maybe I'm not the person to ask about that. Granted, nobody listens to my podcast, but still, I'm sure if people filter through it, they can find enough dirt on myself to kind of like throw me under the bus. So I don't know. Everyone lives their life in different ways, I guess, right?
But these folks are also a lot younger than you and I think it's very different. So like, obviously on social media, I don't post anything that I wouldn't want like the management of my company seeing. So mostly get pictures of my kids or, corny pictures of me and my family. But my cousin's kids who are like 17, some of the, the pictures they post, like they're in bathing suits. We actually recently talked about this at like a Sunday dinner. And I'm like, you guys are going to like have a career one day. Like when you go on an interview, they might do like a, the social media check, and they're going to see you at 17 years old, like on vacation in your bathing suit. And they were just like, what? Like it doesn't dawn on them yet. So I don't know, maybe it's a generational thing and it won't matter in another 20 years.
So, I mean, that is a weird thing to think about, right? So you and I mean, we're not babies anymore, right? And we grew up pre-social media, right? So for me, I mean, just throwing it out there, for me, I've been married now for over 20 years. I met Beth, or we started dating back in 2001. That was before social media, before stuff like that, right? So we never really had to worry about like, okay, you're dating somebody and then you break up. Do you then clear out your Instagram and your Facebook? Right? Like I'd imagine nowadays, like you're dating somebody, obviously you make it like Facebook, whatever. And you say, dating or seeing somebody. Like when you break up, you make it like official and you have to actually delete them off of your timeline. So like, it's a very weird situation, I guess. Like
it is weird.
I'd say even like, years ago when you had a friend and your friend kind of just like, you just kind of like grew apart. Like you didn't have to like literally do anything to kind of like, end the friendship, I guess you could say. You just stop talking. Versus like nowadays, like people have to potentially proactively unfriend on Facebook. And that makes it official. Like I'd say as I've gotten older, I've had a few situations where that's happened versus like, 30 years ago, that wasn't a thing. Basically, you just wouldn't call each other or wouldn't see each other anymore. And that was pretty much it,
It's a lot of work.
It is. A lot of work. It is. I mean, it's exhausting, I would imagine, growing up in this where you've got like this whole presence around you and you're curious, like, what do people think about? What do people see? Stuff like that. It's a very different dimension we'd have to worry about.
Yeah, I'll take growing up the way we did any day. I think it's great that all these kids have information at their fingertips and all this technology, but it's a lot.
So I'll say true, but at the same time, again, I'll play devil's advocate for a second here. As an introvert, I mean, it's a lot easier for me to make friends that have, let's say, similar interests nowadays versus growing up, right? So again, like Beth and I met at work, and that was the norm back then. Right? People years ago would meet either at work, either like a setup through a friend at a bar or whatever else like that. I was never good at any of those things. Like for me, it just wasn't really a good approach. Versus nowadays, you can go. I guess there's like dating websites, or even like social media groups, whatever else like that, you can more easily meet friends and people who have similar interests. So I do wonder, like, if I would have thrived more, not thrived, I mean, I don't know what the word is, but like what my situation would have been like if, let's say, I was born 30 years later or 20 years later, and like I had a different environment around me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess I'm looking at the sense of like, I already probably spend way too much time like scrolling the internet.
Right.
So like, what would 17-year-old me do? Like, would I kind of be behind the screen versus out doing things?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the internet's definitely changed things. Social media's changed things. Yeah. I mean, without getting too dark or too weird on this one, or whatever, I mean, even finding adult content, right? Like, as a teenager, people had to really work to get adult content, whether it be pictures or videos or whatever else like that. Nowadays, I mean, legitimately, anybody can go on their phone or their iPad, and there it is. Which, again, good or bad, no judgments here. But I mean,
you'd have to like go on TV, hope the channel wasn't blocked, or we would call it like in college watching the squigglies.
Yes.
Like you obviously didn't pay for it. So it would be like the black static, and you'd like hope it got clear enough.
That, or it was like, oh, my friend's dad or friend, somebody had pictures or found a video or something. So it was a whole different situation.
Like, the kids don't have to work for it.
I mean, is that good or is it bad? I don't know.
I don't know.
It just is, I guess, right? It's not good or it's not bad. It's just the way that society is.
It's just different.
In any event, let's get back to Love is Blind. So for those of you that have watched or watched the season, this might be a little more familiar, for others not. For me, I thought the most interesting of the groups was, and Jamie, feel free to speak in or talk to whatever I'm saying here. So there was one couple, Lauren and David. This was, I would say, dealing with probably one of the more emotionally immature people that I've ever seen on one of these types of shows. So before going on the show, Lauren dated, saw different people. I'm sure David probably did as well. Lauren and David ended up getting together on the show, and then things seemed to be going well. They seemed to be, quote, in love, whatever. But then eventually David found out, because, again, as we mentioned before, everyone's from Minneapolis and people know people, that Lauren may have hooked up with somebody or been with somebody like a week or 2 weeks before they went onto the show. And David just would not drop this. Like, legitimately, for weeks and weeks, he kept bringing it up. She said it was like a one-time fling, wasn't a big deal, and he kept pushing it and all that kind of stuff. So for me,
it was like a friend with benefits for her, which
but she was single at the time. I mean, there's really legitimately nothing, in my opinion, wrong with this, right? This is the way people choose to live their lives. But the problem was he wouldn't drop it, and every time it seemed like they were in a good place, he would bring it up again. So it seemed like he just never, his head was never there to fully make it work. And he kept, like, he wouldn't introduce her to like his family or his friends. And he also had this mysterious sister he kept bringing up, which is very weird. His sister was never on the show. We never really heard anything from her. But he kept saying that, like, oh, she's very scared or suspicious of Lauren and such, which is very, very weird. I don't know. Like, there's had to have been something going on there.
What annoyed me from like the get-go was actually like Lauren just seemed like a really nice girl. Like she was almost like girl next door. But this guy David, like in the intro where they do like his introduction, he talks about being like a pharmaceutical sales representative, and he surrounds himself by beautiful people, and all his girlfriends are beautiful, and he's a player, and like, so he describes himself as that type, but then he's upset that she had a friend with benefits. And it was like, David, you're not this wholesome guy. You basically said you're superficial. Right. You have all these hookups. You only like pretty people. And that's why you're on the show, to challenge yourself. But then you're mad that she had like someone before you. So it was very disconnected from like how he portrayed himself to be in the earlier episodes. It was strange. He screwed up on that one.
Oh, big time. And I think even like going into like near the end of, before they got engaged, like, didn't he decide he wanted to choose between like Lauren and somebody else? Yeah. And like when they start, pitting it up as a competition, it feels very, very weird, as opposed to like, I'm going to pick between one of you two. We'll see who the winner is, versus like, I have a connection with this person, so this is the person for me. Like, and again, like I never had the opportunity to speed date because that wasn't really a thing when I was still single.
Yeah, I never did it.
So I don't necessarily know what the mentality is, But it's just a very weird situation where, like, up until the end, he was like, it's going to be one of you two. And then he picked one, and she was, quote, the lucky winner, I guess. But that didn't really work out so well for them.
But it also was so weird. Like, when you're watching this, you think that they're in these pods talking for like months and months. It's 2 weeks.
Yes.
So like at the end of the 2 weeks, and they're like, I feel like I've known you my whole life. I'm so in love with you. I'm like, it's 2 weeks.
Right.
but you're watching it and you're there for it. You're like, yes, this connection's going to work. Like, what goes on in those 2 weeks is kind of crazy.
So to that point, oh, absolutely. And to that point, I look at it and I'm like, initially I was like, this would never be something I'd want to do. It would never work for me. But then in thinking about it again, I'm like, okay, so in some cultures there are arranged marriages, right? Where basically like the male or the female or whoever it is doesn't really have a say in what's going on. So at least this is almost like an arranged marriage where they at least have some say and kind of like click on some personality before they decide what they want to do, right? I mean, for thousands of years, there have been people where like, the parents would just pair their kids up and say you're married and whatever else like that. And that was that. So at least this is kind of like almost like an evolution of that, where they get a chance to see if they have something in common or commonalities before they go ahead and do it, right?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like an arranged marriage.
Yeah.
At least they have a little bit more of a say.
They do, which is I guess good. But again, like some people are just looking for something. They don't, I don't know. Some people at some point just decide I want to fall in love or I want to be with somebody, and they don't have the initiatives or whatever they push to do it themselves. So if somebody matches them like on Love Is Blind, I guess it's not for everybody, but for some people maybe, right? I don't know.
Yeah, there's like another show which I should be embarrassed to say that I watch, but whatever.
Sure.
Married at First Sight. That one I don't watch religiously. I've only seen a couple seasons. But they actually have like a marriage counselor and a therapist that like works with them. So these people, for those that don't know it, you just say, I'm going to get married. The producers, whoever, matches you up. So you don't even get to see or talk to the person. And then you get to the altar and you're like, oh my God, I'm just going to marry this person. And then like after you get married, you see if you could like work it out.
Yeah.
And that's also crazy, but you at least have like a couples counselor and like therapist working with you along the way. And surprisingly on that show too, there are still couples that have lasted. So
interesting.
They call it like even on Love Is Blind, like, oh, this is an experiment. Like,
yes,
experiment does work sometimes.
It does. I mean, I would be curious. And again, we're only a few years in or whatever. Like, how many of these marriages last like 20 or 30 years, right? So, I mean, just by default, they say statistically, 50% of all marriages end in divorce. So right off the bat, you figure the odds are, against them, I guess, whatever. But, when you throw in the variable of they don't know each other very well going into it, I would imagine, and again, I have no idea, small sample size anyway, but statistically, this can't help the fact of it. I mean, most people probably date their significant other a few years before they get married.
Oh, yeah.
To do this like a month or so before is obviously it's weird. But I mean, if it works for them, hopefully they last, right?
I know I'm interested to see if the other couple, Daniel and Taylor, last, because from the beginning I was like a big fan of them. I'm like, they're a real nice couple. Like that was like a good pair. She went a little crazy though. Like after they got engaged, where she thought that like he followed her on Instagram prior to the show. She had a moment of crazy. So at first I was like, oh, I think Taylor might be a little nuts. And we're about to see it. But then she wasn't. She just had like a moment of crazy. But the two of them were actually like a really good couple. Also recently looked them up on Instagram. They're still together.
Nice.
So I'm like, oh, I wonder how much longer.
So real quick background for those on what Jamie just said. So Taylor and Daniel, spoiler alert, were the one couple that lasted and married on the show. So after they were in the pods and they got engaged and they saw each other and they're about to kind of leave, Taylor. So the idea is the first time that these couples see each other is after they're engaged. They have this magic moment where they see each other and usually make out or kind of like say hi, stuff like that or whatever. But that's supposed to be the first time they actually see each other's faces. There was a moment, though, not long after that, where Taylor had a bit of a freak out that Jamie was talking about, where she was convinced that Daniel had found her on Instagram or followed her and then unfollowed her before the show even started. Which I guess she was trying to make the case that if that were true, that he had seen her ahead of time, which would be disqualifying, which would kind of be against the idea of the show. Eventually, she ended up leaving him. It was a whole drawn-out thing. So I don't know. I guess that's part of the issue, too, with whenever they have all the stuff like in a town where people can actually know each other. Like I would imagine, if all it takes is one person to get a list of who the cast is before they go in the show, go on Instagram, look people up, and all of a sudden you get a quick, teaser of who is who, which I guess is not what they're looking for. So I don't know. It's it's very weird. Again, it was a very weird moment in the fact that I was convinced that they're done. This isn't going to happen. But I mean, what do I know? They ended up, quote, getting married in the show. So that's where we were.
And it was funny because the producers gave her phone so she could like prove him wrong. And then she's like scrolling and she's like, oops.
Oops, I don't see you. You didn't follow me. I don't know.
I think it was someone else. And he handled it really well. Instead of being like, okay, you're nuts. You just like falsely accused me. Like, this is crazy. He was like, it's okay. People make mistakes. And I was like, oh, he's a real nice guy. So I would have been like, all right, this is crazy. Maybe this isn't going to work.
So my other favorite point, I think, from the show, and this was on a couple that didn't make it, was Virginia and Devin. So there were two things that I think that were very, let's say, interesting about this the couple. So number one, and again, I want to say early on, but I mean, the whole show lasts about a month. So I guess in theory, the whole show is early on. But at one point, Virginia and Devin start talking politics. Virginia's trying to talk politics. Devin's trying not to talk politics. And very quickly, Virginia realizes that they're not on the same page from a political spectrum perspective, which to Virginia is very important. To Devin, seems less important, although it seems like his family has the same political views that he does. So it could obviously lead into a weird situation. So it's one of those things where they tried to have a conversation, or she did. He didn't really want to have the conversation. And then she tried to bring it up again and it just didn't really happen. And I think that it really didn't hit her in the right way. The other piece, what was going on in parallel with this as well, was, and they don't talk about this often in the show, was she wanted a prenup versus most of the couples don't really talk about it. So she went to her lawyer. She got a prenup written up. His family was not happy at all with the introduction of the prenup because his family was like, well, if you're going to marry him, it's forever, no matter what, which, I mean, in 2025 isn't necessarily the reality, right? Especially with the stat that I gave earlier. So went back and forth. Eventually, he signed the prenup and then it was filed, I guess, legally, which for me at that point, I was convinced they were probably going to make it because why would you go through
totally thought they were going to make it. That was a surprising one for me because like he signed it, the dates leading up, because normally you could kind of tell like that last date before like the altar. Sometimes like they'll just bring up something random and you're like, ooh, why would they bring that up? That's not good. That one was actually a good one.
It seemed like it. I mean, again, I think the politics could definitely have been like, a red flag between the two of them. But like she went through, her lawyer to get a prenup. He went to his family lawyer for prenup. So they actually went through this process. Now, again, we assume that's what happened. Maybe they showed it to a producer and said it's fine or whatever. But they actually went through that extra step for a prenup and then still didn't get married. That surprised me. So for me, I thought that was going to be the one, but it apparently was not, which was weird.
Yeah, and I think at the reunion, Virginia said they tried to even date after that, and then things got like a little dramatic. Like there was definitely like some tension. I forgot what they said at the reunion though, but I know like they tried. But speaking of politics, that was the same thing with Sarah and Ben. But what was crazy is they talked about that in the pods. Like she was very Democratic. He didn't have a position one way or the other, but he was very religious. She was upset that he didn't have a strong position. He's like, hey, politics aren't my thing. So she already knew that was like a big deal for her. And she continued anyway. And I thought that wasn't very fair of her. Like if you knew that you could not be with someone who didn't share very strong political views of your side, then like she should have just ended it right there.
Yeah, it was interesting. And again, obviously, in that situation, at least in the pods anyway, there's probably, like, we don't know what's actually happening. Right? There's a lot going on. There's a lot of
They're drinking a lot, too.
Yeah.
They always have that gold cup. I'm like, what's in that cup?
The alcohol helps. I mean, who knows how much they're sleeping? They could be sleep deprived. Like, who knows what's going on? I agree, though. I mean, I would think, like, there's lots of things that, like, and again, as, I guess more of a traditionalist, I would probably talk, in the pods about politics, about personal finance, different things. If we want kids or don't want kids, kind of the basics of what in theory, when you're dating someone for a couple of years, would come up. Versus in the pods, in such a short amount of time, I'm guessing they don't have the time to necessarily check off all the boxes.
Yeah, but you think that would be like the basics? Like there's like the basic checklist, like all the other random stuff you think would come later. It's like because even for that one couple, it was like he was very religious, she was not. That was like kind of an issue for them. That should have kind of been discussed from the beginning.
Agreed. But I guess the problem is like those topics aren't romantic, right? Like if you want to think about it, right? So if you go on a first, second, or a third date, these things may not come up, right? These people might only have 3 or 4 dates before they get engaged. So it's a case of they're not necessarily thinking through it rationally. It's more of like a romantic aspect of like, hey, is this person interesting to me? As opposed to, the deeper stuff. You know what I mean?
I do think it's like not so much like there's like a little bit of like a competition too. Like,
Sure.
You don't want to not leave with someone because even like some of the conversations they have, they're like, oh, but then I'm gonna have to go home. It's like, well, the purpose of you going on the show is to find your like forever person.
Yes.
So if you don't find it, yes, you're going home, but they don't want to go home. So I think they get a little like wooed by the experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with cameras there, all things going on or whatever, like, again, I could see it being very easily to get caught up in the moment and saying, like, to your point, it's a competition, it's a game. I want to go home with somebody, but then eventually you realize that somebody may not be your forever person, at which point, this season, 80% of those couples that made it through the engagement did not get married. So, I mean, that statistic feels right to me,
Yeah. I always watch a show and I think, like, what would I do if I was on this show? Like, would I get, like, sucked in? And then it's like, how much of it, to your point, is your environment? You're drinking, everyone's in it, you're having these conversations. So it's like, to them, they think like the convos are so deep and these topics, like, but how much is it that you're just like falling, I guess it's not falling victim, but like falling into just the environment that you're in and then like once you're home and stuff, you're like, yeah, okay, that was a little crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you don't have like your support system around you to tell you like the reality check, right? Like you don't have your friends, you don't have your family to say, oh, so tell me about this person you're seeing, right? Like it's basically like you and you've got the other guys or the girls in the pods who are just like revving you up, right? And talking about, yeah, it's awesome. Or you get some of them who are competing with you for the same person. So they're trying to like downplay it, but you don't have anybody who's necessarily got like your best intentions in their mind,
The only thing I wish the show would do is like, for the most part, everyone that goes on is pretty attractive. It's just like different degrees of attractive, but no one you ever go on is like relatively very unattractive.
Right.
So if it's Love is Blind, I really want them to put in some like really cool people that just happen to not be as attractive and really see like how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about that also. I mean, I agree. I mean, if the idea truly is Love is Blind, they should do that. I mean, it is TV at the same time as well. I guess they're not necessarily just thinking through the different couples, but obviously they're thinking through people who look at Instagram or perusing Netflix and like, hey, I want to see this. Like, if you have a lot of, let's say, less than Hollywood-esque people on the show, you may lose some viewers. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's some market research behind what they do and why they do it. I mean,
oh, of course, like people like to look at good-looking people.
Sure.
But I would love to see like a beautiful girl with an average guy or vice versa, just to see like if you have this amazing connection in the pods and then like the curtains draw back, everyone for the most part is pretty satisfactory, but like, who they see, except for last year. Remember last year, the guy didn't like that you had so much makeup. I forgot what their names are. Do you remember that?
So. It sounds familiar. It's been a while since I've watched the last season.
Yeah, I forgot their names, but she wasn't ugly. I mean, I thought she was attractive, but she did wear a lot of makeup. But also for the reveals, the girls get a little extra dolled up.
Right.
And he wasn't having it.
My favorite though is the people who have a complex. So this has happened at least twice, I think, in the overall series, where one guy keeps talking about how girls don't like me because I'm short, because I'm only 5'8", which again, I am only 5'8" myself, whatever. I've never really, held up too much to that. I would have really cared. But like almost to the point where like the girl didn't care, except he brought it up multiple times.
Yeah, that's just like his insecurity.
It's insecurity, but at the same time, it's like, just go with it. She's into you. Just kind of like forget about it.
Yeah.
If it's going to be an issue, they'll bring it up. But, it's one of those things, again, like I'm waiting for like a really tall person, a really short person to get together, or people like that, I guess, or waiting for someone who like someone's covered in tattoos and the other one hates tattoos. Like, because sometimes tattoos don't come up in conversation. So little things like that,
Well, that was like the couple this year too. Was it Madison and Mason?
Yeah.
Well, Madison, but she had a lot of like tattoos and stuff, and he was a little bit not like that, right? Like, was he like a little like nerdy?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. But him and Jen, they were like two peas in a pod. But he ended up going, I think, more for Madison because remember she was like talking all like sexy to him and stuff. And I think he got a little into more of like how she was talking and like the fantasy of it versus who's good for me long term.
Yeah. So to that point, then, what also always intrigues me as well is again, you've got 5 couples, 5 guys, 5 girls get together, get engaged, go on an island vacation, have a great time. But then there's always in the series, one of the last episodes is when basically the entire cast kind of goes to a bar.
Oh,
and this is where
my
like
favorite.
It's always like people meeting each other for the first time and stuff like that. And what's crazy to me also is taking a step back as well. So when the show starts again, you got 5 guys and 5 girls who end up getting together and get engaged. But like generally, like from the first episode or two, when they're in the pods, you've got like 20 guys and 20 girls. And like very quickly you realize who's going to be kind of like a nothing burger in the show because they don't really get a name. You don't ever really see them like in the pod, but you always see them in the common area, like in the background. You're like, I wonder who that is. And then eventually some of them you end up seeing later on, like in the bar meetup, whatever. So for me, the dynamic is oftentimes it's less about like the 5 couples and more about kind of the background or extras to see kind of like what ends up happening or where they end up landing, you know?
But I love it too. It's like when they are between the two and then they meet the other person that they didn't choose.
Right.
Like remember last year, the girl who said she looked like Megan Fox and she most definitely did not look like Megan Fox. But then the girl he didn't choose was drop dead gorgeous.
Yeah. I mean,
that one was like a good one. It's like, we can't wait for, I think his name was Jimmy, for Jimmy to meet Jess because he did not get a Megan Fox.
Yep. And then fast forwarding at the end of the series, so generally the last episode is the reunion, where it's usually 9 months or 10 months after the show airs, and and generally what will happen is you have some people who have like a makeover and look different. Like I remember, season 7, the one married couple, like they completely redid themselves, hair dye, got in shape, different things, whatever else like that. And I'm always looking at it, I'm like, who are these people? These aren't the people from the show, but you see after a year, I guess in Hollywood or making the most of being on the show, they've kind of like relaunched themselves to what they want to be. It's just always interesting to see or intriguing to see where they were versus where they are now.
Yeah. Like they almost like end up becoming like a reality personality versus someone that was just on the show.
Yeah. And then just trying to see like how everything works, whatever else. It's always funny. Like this season, and this season, the reunion, I don't remember the specific names, but there was a lot of trash talking that went on the reunion, which is crazy to me. In the fact that there were people who were saying you're doing this, you're doing that. And I was waiting for a fight to break out, which was pretty insane, I thought.
Seems like after the show ended, they all still continued to hang out or date, even if they didn't get married. Like there was so they talk about like small town.
Yeah. You
kind of like saw some of that, where I think like in some of the other reunions, they might have just had a little bit more of a clean break.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine. We're 8 seasons in. I'm very curious to see where they go in the future. I mean, outside of going to Denver, but I'm curious to see like legitimately if they start adding in different things or if it's kind of the same formula again, because at some point viewers are going to want something different, some kind of evolution. So I'm curious like where that goes to, or if they I mean, even Survivor's been on the air for like 45 or 50 seasons at this point. Like if you compare season 1 to like now, I don't watch it. I watched the first few seasons. I'm sure it's significantly different than when it first started.
Yeah. And you would think too, like, you start to like catch on. Like, do people now know that they have to have a certain angle to like get on the show? I know every year I'm like, I think I'm done with Love is Blind. Like it's the same thing, just different year. And then like, sure enough, I'm like, maybe I'm just going to watch the first episode. And then I'll be texting you at midnight, be like, Jeff, did you see it? You think you're done, but you're really not.
I mean, I guess
Denver. I'm not going to lie.
We're going to watch it. I'm sure we're going to text about it. And I'm sure a year from now, we'll probably be podcasting about that as well, too.
Yeah.
Like, I'm waiting. Maybe a season eventually ends up being like parents in the pod trying to set up their kids, almost like, like I was mentioning before, how like this is almost like a new age, setting up of your kids. Like maybe that eventually
there was a show like that, Jeff.
Was there?
It was like on MTV years and years ago.
Okay.
The moms would meet the guys and then pick which one they wanted to date their daughter.
Huh.
I totally forgot what the name of it was.
I'm sure as soon as we stop recording, it'll pop into your head or whatever. But I mean, who knows what they're going to do? I mean, reality shows have definitely come a long way over the last 25 years. So we'll see what happens.
Listen,
right?
All the dating ones, I'm like, surprisingly, I don't watch The Bachelor because that's like the OG like dating show. And that one I just never got into. But like, as you know, I'm big into like 90 Day Fiance.
Yes.
I mean, it's getting a little played out now because they have like so many of them, but I'm there for it.
Then there's the Golden Bachelor or Golden Bachelorette, which is like old people dating or the old people Bachelor. I don't know.
Crazy. I haven't watched that one. I did watch it towards a couple seasons of Married at First Sight. That one's wild. I'm
sure it is.
It's
I mean, I'd say reality show wise, like at this point, I mean, basically it's this. This is probably it. I mean, I watch this. Obviously, I watch a lot of professional wrestling, which I guess is pseudo reality, but not really. But yeah, like I probably should watch more reality shows because it's a lot of it's like car crash TV, right? You have to watch it. It's silly, but like it's an escape, right? It gets
it's mindless. You could be on your phone. Sometimes I'm even just like working, catching up on emails. You don't have to like pay attention like a good scripted show.
Right.
But I probably watch more reality TV show than I probably would like to admit. So like I always watch Summer House.
Yeah.
But now that one of the characters on Summer House was dating a cast member on Southern Charm, then I started watching Southern Charm, and now I'm like, what are you doing? And I really don't have that much free time. So the fact that I could squeeze in this much TV is quite impressive, surprising. I don't know. Depends.
But it makes you happy. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it's about, right? It's about kind of like, how do I, no matter how tough or weird or whatever my life is, like, how do I escape for a short amount of time and just kind of like be happy with something?
Yeah, because you watch this and you're like, this is crazy, but you get like invested in these cast members. Like clearly, like Summer House, like I'm very upset. Paige dumped Craig on Southern Charm. I'm like Team Craig.
Yeah, and I'll watch these shows sometimes in full transparency and feel better about my own life or whatever. I'm like, you know what, my life is pretty good. I feel pretty good. I make some decent money. I have a good job. My family is great, whatever else like that. Like I don't know, for whatever reason, it kind of like, it makes me feel good about myself, which I don't know what that says about me. But I guess it's one reason why some people watch these shows,
It could always be worse, is what I'm learning.
It absolutely is. So with that said, we are just about out of time, Jamie. So first of all, thank you again for joining, being the first sister legacy combination on the show. I'm sure we'll probably find some other combination, or maybe look at your dad at some point. We'll see. I'm sure he has a lot to say about life or the Yankees or something.
You could get the whole family on.
Why not? We'll get Dean on when he's a little bit older.
He's quite chatty. He could probably kill 45 minutes with you very easily, as long as you don't mind talking about Ninja Turtles and Super Mario Brothers.
We could talk all about his first Yankees game, and I could pretend I know what he's talking about.
Yes.
And he can go on and on about everything at the game. Like, this is fantastic, right?
Listen, my family's very chatty. We could probably get you through a next couple of episodes.
I'm sure. Anything you'd like to support? Anybody you want to say hi to? Anything you want to shout out before we move on for the day?
No, I don't think so. Just like, thank you for having me on. This was so much fun. Hopefully we can find another topic that's not reality TV, because now your listeners are probably like, who is this girl? But if you do want another reality TV episode, I'm here, and I probably watched it.
I'm just excited we finally got this together, because I remember the reason why I had your sister on the show was because we were talking about like how we can get you on. You're like, hey, I'm not sure about me, but my sister would be a great guest. And I was like, that sounds fantastic. So it took us about 9-10 months, but we finally got a great topic for you. I'm sure we'll find something else at some point.
Which is funny, because I'm the extroverted sister and I'm very chatty. She's introverted. She doesn't really like to talk, but I served her up. She's a little more interesting than I am.
You're both very interesting, and I think you're both awesome people. So, Jamie, thank you for that.
Thank you. This was fun. Thanks, Jeff.
Of course. With that said, once again, I want to thank everybody for listening. Once again, you can find the show on Instagram at Everybody Has a Story Pod. My personal Instagram is at Seltzer77 for all things Jeff Seltzer. You can always check me out at jeffseltzer.com. You can email the show at everybodyhasastorypod@gmail.com. Make sure to tell your friends, family, and your friends' family that we are available on all podcast platforms, including video on Spotify and YouTube, audio everywhere else. Reminder, 2 wrestling shows coming up that I'll be sponsoring on May 25th at the Mecca in Ridgefield Park, New Jersey. I'll be sponsoring a 3-way women's match, which as a feminist, this is what I do. I'll also be doing commentary over the match, which is really exciting. Super excited to see it. Definitely check it out if you're in the area. Also on July 27th, PWJ2, I will be recording another live podcast similar to what I did back in January. Hopefully we'll get a lot of wrestlers, fans, friends, referees, whoever. Will be an awesome time. With that said, have an amazing time, an amazing week, and I'll have another amazing episode next week. Thank you so much, and take care.